it's time to look yourself in the mirror. Do you remember those angelic Israeli children in the choir singing, "We're going to annihilate Gaza"? You know, I don't even think stuff like that. I really don't. Not in public. It didn't happen in Nazi Germany. They might talk about, in sort of like broad terms, the Judeo-Bolshevik conspiracy. But to say, we are going to annihilate, well, no, they did say we'll annihilate the Jews. No, they did say that. So that was, but you wouldn't have
Not
seen
in videos, maybe.
You wouldn't see angelic kids doing that. You know, I don't think so. There was a period where I knew all this literature, and I think I wrote quite effectively on the subject of Nazi Holocaust, if I can toot my own horn. But now I've forgotten that was another period in my life. But what does that say about a society? These angelic children singing a chorus, "We're going to annihilate Gaza." Yes, look in the mirror. I think that's good advice. As for the rest,
I mean, she keeps saying enough. I'm sick of it. As if Israel isn't engaging in as if Israel's sitting on its hands and not engaging in a genocide right now.
As if nobody condemned October 7th. I mean, the degree of narcissism.
And saying never again and never again.
So those are my random thoughts on that rather sad episode in the annals of public conversation. It does sometimes cause me to wonder whether at least some of the folks on stage aren't thinking, well, not sure if I really agree with that. Okay, she says there are 20 to 30,000 rapists in Gaza. So take us to the next step. Should we have a commando raid and kill them, or should we wipe out Gaza? It was unclear to me what she saw as the next step. She said, I felt uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable living next door to those people who are rapists. And I thought to myself, well, you know what, young lady, though she's not so young, but you know what, young lady, I would feel uncomfortable living down the block from a concentration camp. I would have a very queasy feeling about that. But they don't even see it. You know, they can't even conceive it. The idea that there might be something wrong with that. They know it. But we have to admit, you know, I don't want to come off as too harsh on those powerfully deranged people in Israel. But everybody learns to accommodate realities which are wretched. I live in New York. Now, you know, in New York, half the new buildings that go up are empty. They're just investments for Arab sheikhs, Russian oligarchs, Chinese billionaires. They're empty. And then we have all these homeless people. We've all
homegrown oligarchs too, American oligarchs also, yeah.
My friend lives at 57 West 57th Street, right around the corner from Carnegie Hall. And he bought an apartment for $40 million. Okay. And you know what he calls the building? He calls it the mausoleum. He said, I've never seen anybody in this building.
Right, of course.
But we have 30,000 homeless people? Well, how do you think history is going to look back on that? So when I say the Israelis accommodate themselves to living next door to a concentration camp, but the thing is, when it's somebody else, we're always shocked. So if you watch Cloud Lanzmann's Shoah, he has these Poles and others who lived right next door to concentration camps. And I said, what did you think? You knew something terrible was happening. What did you think? And of course, they look terrible. But how about if we ask Israelis the same thing? What do you think living next door to a concentration camp? What do you think? But I also believe, as I said, you can also ask, how as a New Yorker, how do you reconcile all these homeless people when half these buildings are empty? So, you know about seeing the plank in your eye before you see the splinter in somebody else's eye. So we should all abide by that principle. But you know, this woman is the level of blindness is really, I have to say, to appropriate Mr. Harris, it really is powerfully deranged.
Yeah.
I don't like to live next to the Goyim. I think we should kill all of them.
But I really do think that for a lot of Israel's defenders, anything they do short of what the Nazis did is okay. It's almost like people should be grateful because you've heard people say, trust us, if we wanted to kill them all, we would.
Well, that's not, there's a certain amount of disingenuousness in that claim, because you have to remember the Nazis couldn't do what they wanted to do in any situation. They, first of all, they couldn't do it in broad daylight in peacetime. Hitler may have made the threats, but he always made the threats within the context of if there is a war. Because it's forgotten when the Nazis carried out Kristallnacht, the German public opinion was overwhelmingly against it. Now, partly it was because they didn't think that was the right thing to do to Jews, and partly because they felt it was beneath German civilization. You don't go around breaking glasses in synagogues. That's riffraff and ruffians who do that. And civilized Germans, Germany was the peak of European culture, civilized Germans don't do it. So Hitler couldn't have done it in broad daylight. He needed a war situation, and he needed the hysteria of the Judeo-Bolshevik conspiracy to destroy Germany, and he needed totalitarianism. They couldn't hear anything else except that message. So there were conditions. Now, I think Israel would have used, if it had the option, after October 7th, Israel was in a bloodlust, total deranged state. You could say, I understand it. Okay, fine. They would have nuked Gaza if they could. But there is an international community that imposes constraints. So when they say, well, and Israel has nukes, it could have just nuked them. No, it couldn't. Not because they don't want to. As we know, one of their ministers said we should nuke Gaza. And then they said, all right, this is pretty embarrassing. Gotta shut this guy up. So they're thinking it, just like this woman here. As far as I can understand, the logical conclusion of I don't like to live near 40,000 rapists was we have to wipe out Gaza. So, but there's a difference between what you would like to do and what, under the constraints of the international community, public opinion, all that, you can do. But we have to give some credit to Israel. It's gone pretty far. Every single metric you look at, you look at the metric of the intensity of the bombing, you look at the metric of the imprecision of the bombs, you look at the metric of the weight of the bombs, you look at the metric of civilian infrastructure destroyed, you look at the metric of women and children versus men killed, you look at the metric of number of children killed relatively and absolutely, and every single metric, Israel's off the map. It's just in a totally different totally different category than any other war in the 20th century. And actually, it's in a different category as compared to war, even World War II. When you look at the amount of physical damage that was done, now remember the US and the UK were engaging in terror bombing. They called it carpet bombing or strategic bombing, but terror bombing the cities. You still didn't have that level of destruction. You didn't have, you just didn't. You didn't have. The Financial Times reported around a week ago. It said that northern Gaza is now uninhabitable. There's nothing there. It's been leveled. Whole cities are gone. Beit Hanun no longer exists. It's gone. It's just been our terror bombing did not achieve that level of, percentage-wise, of destruction. So even though they haven't nuked Gaza, you have to say they've accumulated a very impressive record. They've accumulated a very impressive record.